All right, for the uninitiated, the August recess is probably the closest thing to sacrosanct as Congress gets as far as doing the same thing every year. So using the August recess to duck out of work is not unusual. In fact, it's very common. In fact, they purposely schedule tough legislation up against this recess like they do the CR at the end of the year, they do against the voting deadlines. This is not uncommon. No. Doing it the way they did it this week, that's extremely uncommon. Break it down for the people.
Okay, so for those who don't know, the whole reason that Congress typically breaks for August is because it's too hot to be in Washington in August. And then the other reason is that, it's supposed to be ostensibly what they call the district work month. Where they go to small business events, ice cream socials, parades, all that nonsense, or all that fun stuff. And the point of it was that, and as you said, it's not uncommon for them to force votes on really difficult legislation just to get it passed, just because nobody wants to stay there and get out of there. What is uncommon is that Speaker Johnson basically ground the House Rules Committee to a halt. And the reason for that was that Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, and a lot of the Democrats began to try and force amendments on disclosing files related to Jeffrey Epstein after the Justice Department kind of bungled the response after spending months saying they had files on their desk. So now basically they've been offering amendments. And so what happened is the Rules Committee, per the instruction of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said no Rules Committee meetings this week until the end of the August recess. And also we're leaving a day early. And the reason for that day early is so important is because, again, our good buddy Thomas Massie, and we can talk about Thomas Massie in a bit, and Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, co-sponsored this thing called a discharge petition. And what happens is that a discharge petition is if you get a majority of the signatures, you can basically force a vote on the floor, and without going through committees or without the permission of the speaker or whatever. And but what needs to happen is it needs to quote unquote ripen for 7 days. So they introduced this 7 legislative business days. So they introduced this thing on Thursday, and basically it's going to be like 5 legislative business days coming today. And since then, and now basically they're cutting out. So this thing is not going to quote unquote ripen until they come back in the September in September.
Yeah, and this is a long recess. Trump's actually spoken that he didn't want him going on the August recess, but he got ignored on that, at least for now. He could conceivably call them back and make Johnson do it. We'll see. But the other part of this is this once again compresses the calendar because, ladies and gentlemen, stop me if you heard this before, we are in the middle of shutdown failure theater. We're just not paying a lot of attention to it yet, but they haven't got the 12 appropriation bills done. They've only got 2. I think it's 2 is cleared markup at this point. The third one was supposed to today, but they left early, so now that's not getting done.
Yes.
This compresses the calendar. Look, we already know where this is going. They're going to do a CR of some shape, form, or fashion. Is it going to be the 1-year CR Harris and them want? I know the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world already said they're not going to do that. Is it going to be a short-term CR to the spring? The Democrats already said they're not going to do that. That's the background to this too, is because whatever the moment issue, the Epstein stuff, all that other stuff, we're going to do shutdown theater. We're going to do a CR of some form or fashion, and then it's midterm season. That's the calendar as far as these people are looking at it.
Correct. So I should differentiate. Trump wanted the Senate to not do go to recess so they could vote on nominees. The House doesn't vote to confirm nominees. So one little differentiation there. But you're right that we're kicking off shutdown failure theater because again the government runs out of money on September 30th. Again, you're seeing that people like Andy Harris in the House Fealty Caucus, as I call them, as my colleague John Bowden calls them, or commonly known as the House Freedom Caucus, are saying they want a 1-year CR. Marjorie Taylor Greene and all of them are going to raise some hell about that. And then the Democrats, they're they say they want bipartisan collaboration, and they're threatening to shoot the hostage, but they're not going to actually shoot the hostage. So this, again, Johnson basically shutting down the House compresses the timeline and makes it even tougher for Tom Cole and all the appropriators to actually do what they're supposed to do. And Johnson and all of them say that they want to do another reconciliation package. I'm genuinely skeptical that they'll be able to do it. This was so painful. It was so painful to do this. They had to literally pull teeth to get it. They have a vote open for 9 hours. Now they're gonna, you're gonna tell me that they're gonna do it again. I just don't believe it. But I've been wrong before. So yes, this is the background. Is this a shutdown failure theater? And Johnson, grinding the House to a halt, basically, as you said, compresses the timeline.
There is the theory that part of the reason Speaker Johnson went ahead and tapped out and sent everybody home is what you just talked about. Political capital is a real thing in Congress. Now, this Congress is very different because they're doing, let's be honest, Mike Johnson's the Speaker of the House, but this is Trump getting what he wants. And this is a Congress and the GOP side that is completely doing whatever Donald Trump wants. Right. There is the theory that Johnson's smart enough to know, no, we just need a cool-off period because he has zero political capital today. In a couple of weeks, he will have that deadline. He'll have the CR deadline. The Trump stuff will cycle to whatever the next couple of cycles of Trump stuff is. They're hoping the Epstein stuff dies down. We'll see if it does or not. There's that prevailing theory among a lot of your congressional reporting colleagues is he just kind of tapped him out and said, let's just reset in a couple of weeks because he's got zero cards to play right now because that political capital is a very real thing. And he just blew through about all of it he had.
Yes, political capital is absolutely real. You have to understand how much political capital Johnson blew through for this. He did a CR. And he had to wrangle all the cats for that. He had to get a budget resolution through. Had to herd all the cats for that. He had to do the original version of the One Big Beautiful Bill back in May, and that blew through political capital. Then he had to kick it back to the Senate, and then he basically said, "We are not changing a word, not a punctuation in that bill. We're gonna how to push that through." And then on top of that, everybody was so focused on the Epstein stuff, we all forgot that the Genius Act, the stablecoin bill for cryptocurrency, that passed, and they had to keep the rule open for 9 hours. So again, he's burned through so much capital. All these folks are grumpy at each other. And this is Johnson basically saying, we need a reset. And he probably would have done this anyway, but sent him back a little bit early just because they were so tired. But grinding the Rules Committee to a halt is a sign, to borrow from Trump. He doesn't have the cards.
Now, that hadn't stopped them before, but there's a couple other things going on right now. Let's just get the big headline out of the way. The Epstein stuff is just getting slathered on everything for the clicks and the views and all that. How much of it is it actually an issue? How much of it is performative? I know the GOP is doing all sorts of distractions now. We're playing all the greatest hits about the Obama and rigging the election and all that. Cut through it for us, though, because the headlines were all, well, they ducked out of town just because of the Epstein stuff. That's part of it. It's not the whole story. Give us the ratio. Cut through the noise. How much is the Epstein stuff flavoring what's going on right now? And how much is something else actually driving some of this?
It is driving a lot of it. Mike Johnson will give a really angry press conference yesterday where he basically said, bless his heart to Thomas Massie. I'm sure you saw that. That polling shows that people don't think it's one of those really interesting things because polling shows that most people, it's not the most pressing issue for them. The Epstein thing isn't going to move mountains, but it is something where Trump just has negative approval on, or people just don't trust the Trump administration, how they've handled it. And so the Democrats, they see blood. They smell blood in the water, and they're trying to hammer this as much as they can. Given they are Republicans are already unpopular, the OBBBA is incredibly unpopular. Something like 6 in 10 Americans disapprove of it, and so what we're seeing is that Democrats really want to force this issue. particularly Ro Khanna and the co-signatories of the discharge petition, and even some of the, I guess we could call them the Chaos Caucus in the House with the conservatives. Some of them not necessarily Freedom Caucus, but like adjacent to the Freedom Caucus, want this because they want to blame Pam Bondi. They want to blame a lot of other people, Cash Patel, Dan Bongino. So that flavors a lot of it, but also just taking into account the Democrats are just looking for something to hit Trump over the head on, and this is something that is prime real estate. And for the conservatives who are, I guess you could say, most captive to the podcast base, the right-wing media ecosystem, they've got to deliver some kind of goods on this thing as well. So
let's talk about the House Freedom Caucus for just a second. Now, you and me have been on their performative more than substantive train for a long, long time, my friend.
right.
We have years worth of video on this if you want to go back and watch me and Eric discussing this over the years.
Yes.
Punch Bowl this morning, Jake Sherman and crew, they do a great job if you're not following them.
do.
You need to. They actually had a cool breakdown on the HFC just in the last few weeks. Listen to this list, buddy. Clay Higgins got passed over for promotion for the guy that's seventh in seniority. In the insult list in Congressional speak, that's right underneath your mama jokes. That's pretty much insult. That's a slap. The procedural vote, we already talked about the 10-hour standoff on that one. This list is amazing of all the fail they've done in the last couple of weeks. They made a lot of noise about stopping the reconciliation. They got basically nothing out of it. They made a lot of noise about the rescission package. They basically got nothing out of it. Your friend and mine, Bethesda Charles, I've been on his team for a couple of weeks because his district was the district in Texas that got flooded. He did good work on that. So let's be fair to people. But he's back in town now, and he's doing his old thing, big speeches and falling in line. Where's the House Freedom Caucus at now? Because here's what happens is they get kind of publicly neutered like they have the last few weeks. But then when we look ahead to what's coming for shutdown failure theater, that's right back in their wheelhouse coming up. And now they're going to act up again. And we start the process all over again of them making a lot of noise, not getting anything done, but they'll get a lot of attention. Where in the lather, rinse, repeat cycle of the raucous caucus are we? Because that feels like where we're at right now.
We're just lathering up. We're just getting in the shower. The thing of it is that, again, is that Johnson, I've posted on this and I've talked about this. I'm really genuinely torn about, is Johnson is Johnson an effective Speaker of the House, or does he just know when to call dad? And my answer that I'm coming to is kind of both, because he kind of broke them. Make no mistake, Johnson also broke their backs when Biden was president, because he basically the kind of equation that he cracked was he would not do anything too extreme, and he would basically work with Hakeem Jeffries to pass something on suspension of the rules. For those who don't know, suspension of the rules where you get 2/3 of the vote. So then that way he basically circumvents the raucous caucus. And then now basically what he's done is he's basically dared the Freedom Caucus, the Chaos Caucus, the Raucous Caucus, the Clown Car Caucus, whatever you want to call them. He's basically dared them to vote against Trump. And so again, what you're going to see with this is that, is the Freedom Caucus actually going to, as I've said multiple times, shoot the hostage? And I have said, we've been on record saying this for multiple times. You can only take a hostage so many times and not shoot the hostage before people just decide you're not serious. They need to actually show that they've gotten something substantive with the spending cuts. They didn't get that many spending cuts, as many spending cuts as they wanted with the rescissions package. They didn't get as much as they wanted in OBBBA. They got some executive orders, but not really anything binding. So again, they have to show what they're actually going to get. And this goes to my larger point about the Freedom Caucus. What they've proven time and time again is that they don't actually care about fiscal responsibility or their principles. They care about power. And to your point about Clay Higgins, they haven't been that good at getting power either.
Well, and to be fair, when they get it, they're not showing a way to really weld it, because one of the things is if you get it and you weld power, people that have like goals, they'll go along with a lot of mess because they want the power and the rub off of the power and to be power adjacent. Their problem is the few times that they've actually gotten some power, they don't seem to know what they do with it. The House Freedom Caucus works great in opposition at throwing rocks at the House, but when they get in the House and get rocks thrown at them, they don't seem to know how to handle it. Is that a fair way to lay it out?
That's the fairest way to say it, and it goes to what a friend of mine says, which is that Republicans don't know how to be in the majority, Democrats don't know how to be in the minority. We're still under the fifth party system. I mean, going to our talk about shutdown failure theater, this goes to the flip side of it. One of the reasons why the Democrats just don't want to do a government shutdown is because they like a lot of the programs and they don't want to risk seeing a lot of these programs that they care about would get shut down for a bit, which is why their kind of threats about shutting down the government are kind of empty. But in the same way, the Freedom Caucus, the only real members of the Freedom Caucus who've actually moved up the ranks are Jim Jordan, who's now Judiciary Chairman, Judiciary Committee Chairman. He's not necessarily been the kind of hardcore ideologue and bomb thrower. He kind of had to grow up a little bit and kind of was, you could argue, a little bit of a sellout. And then Bethesda Charles and Ralph Norman on the Rules Committee, and they've consistently folded. So to your point, yeah, they don't know how to do it. And the reason why is because the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, they share the same voters with Trump, and their voters are always going to pick Trump over fiscal responsibility any day of the week.